HCAM programming is supported by our viewers
and by WPC Pest Control, a family-owned business for over 35 years. Owners Jim and Rebecca Mazzucchelli provide honesty, respect, and integrity, performing safe and effective pest control services. They service your home like it's their home, because when you have kids, you know what families want: a safe, pest-free home.
And by Golden Pond Assisted Living, honoring resident choice, dignity, and independence. Our health and wellness focus keeps residents active. Golden Pond, state-of-the-art senior housing and healthcare services.
You're watching HCAM TV, and for more Hopkinton, visit HCAM Ed.
On behalf of the Hopkinton Women's Club, I'd like to welcome you to the 34th annual Meet the Candidates Night. My name is Kathy Hebden, and I'll be the moderator this evening. The Hopkinton Women's Club was founded in 1920, when women were gaining the right to vote. Each year, with the exception of 2020, we organize Candidates Night to help town citizens decide who to cast their ballot for in the upcoming town election. We always welcome new members, and we encourage anyone interested in our scholarship and community service organization to visit our website at hopkintonswomensclub.org. Our format this evening begins with an opening statement from every candidate. Each one will have a limit of 2 minutes for remarks. The timers and volunteers this evening include Women's Club members and 2 Hopkinton Middle School students. They will hold up signs periodically to indicate how much speaking time is left. When necessary, they'll ring a bell to signify the end of 2 minutes, and we'll move on. Audience members, please hold your applause until all of the opening statements have been completed. Now, on to our first speaker. For Town Clerk, Ellen Rudder. I'm sorry, actually Town Clerk is Connor Deegan, but he's up for re-election, and he's a Democrat, and he decided not to participate in order to give more time for the contested races. But our first speaker this evening is Ellen Rudder, Democrat for Town Moderator.
Town Moderator has one responsibility: to moderate the town meeting. Good evening. My name is Ellen Rudder, and I'm pleased to be the appointed Town Moderator who will be facilitating town meeting on Monday, May 2nd. Town meeting provides the opportunity for our entire community to come together to review the proposed budget and key initiatives that go with it. This year we're looking at a $104 million budget, and there are 53 individual initiatives we'll be talking about at town meeting. It's your opportunity to ask questions and to cast your vote on these initiatives. My role as moderator will be to make sure the meeting runs smoothly and efficiently. I've been the deputy town moderator here in Hopkinton for the past 5 years, and I facilitated one meeting, a special meeting in 2019. Not only do I really enjoy doing this in town politics, it's also my career. I facilitate meetings on very complex topics for a local pharmaceutical company. My family and I moved here to Hopkinton about 20 years ago. Both of my young adult sons went through the Hopkinton public schools. My volunteer experience includes my neighborhood association, my church, and a local nonprofit college access organization. I'm also into town politics. I hope you will join me on May 2nd at town meeting, and I hope you will vote for me on May 16th at our town election. Thanks for your support.
For the Board of Selectmen, the 3-year position where you can vote for 2, the first candidate is Mary Jo Lafreniere, candidate for re-election, Democrat.
Whoops. I think I lost a hearing aid. Give me a second here. Okay. First, I want to thank the Women's Club for having this wonderful event. They really are a great service for the town, and we appreciate it. And I suppose you've all heard I'm Mary Jo Lafreniere. I'm running for a re-election for the Select Board. I have been on the Board of Assessors, the Tax Relief Committee. I've been a Commissioner of Trust Funds, and on the Marathon Committee and the Marathon Fund Committee over the years, one for 30 years or 35 years. So I've had a lot to do with the town. I've lived in the town for 40 years and brought up 2 children here and absolutely love it. The last 3 years on the Select Board have been crazy, as they have for all of you with this pandemic. But even with that, we have managed to bring about a number of things. One is 2 town meetings outdoors, and the logistics of that were not easy. The town elections were adjusted to run smoothly, and we did have our town elections. 2 marathons in 1 year, and we started the Downtown Corridor project. We set up a tier sewer water billing system. We had 3 additions to 3 schools. We renovated the Hopkinton Center for the Arts building, which is now complete. And my collaboration, I'm on the MWRTA for the board, and we have now a wheelchair accessible van that we can use in town, and I think that's wonderful. And during all this time, we were able to maintain level services for the town, despite the pandemic. And I would like to continue with this team. And it is a team effort. It's one town, one team. And I would like to continue for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, for the Select Board, John Catino, Republican.
I'd like to start by thanking the Hopkins Women's Club and the HCAM for hosting this event. Anyone who knows me doesn't question that I care deeply about the direction of our town. I cherish this community. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've improved the services and facilities our taxpayers use every day. In fact, we've managed our schools at a level that has allowed them to become top-tier schools in the Commonwealth, both public and private. We're in the process of improving the downtown corridor, which, when finished, will make doing business downtown more accessible and allow our local merchants to thrive more than they have in over a century. People from all over want to live in Hopkinton, but we can't rest on our laurels. Hopkins leadership needs to consistently search for ways to improve and maintain the town's desirability. How do we do this? Continue improvements of our infrastructure while taking care of the hard-working people that serve the needs of the town, and also respect the taxpayers. And in doing this, we will also attract new businesses. If this sounds good to you, I've got a proven track record, having served 2 terms on the Select Board in achieving all of these things. Renovation of our beautiful new library, new DPW building, new school, appropriately growing the police and fire departments, and never having to ask taxpayers for a Proposition 2.5 override. In fact, passing 3 underrides. But just like Hopkins can't rest on its laurels, neither will I. I always prided myself as being a full-time board member. When done properly, this position is much more than appearing at HCAM 2 evenings a month to state an opinion and agree with 4 other members. I approach this position as being a true liaison to the taxpayers and workers in Hopkinton, constantly attending parades, presentations, and retirements, all to be the most accessible representative I could be. That's how you learn others' opinions and concerns firsthand, and that's how you represent the taxpayers to the board and the board to the taxpayers. My municipal experience has prepared me to be the most engaged and efficient candidate who will get your thoughts, ideas, and demands the attention and implementation they deserve. I respectfully ask for your vote on Monday, May 16th. Hopkinton deserves at least 1 full-time Select Board member, and I want to be it. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Shahul Manon, also the Democrat for one of the 3-year positions on Select Board.
Thank you, Kathy. I want to thank the Hopkinton Women's Club and HCAM for tonight's event, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Shahidul Manan, and I'm running for Select Board, looking for your support and vote. First, I got to clarify something, which is, despite my strong Boston accent and light Irish touch on my last name, I came to this country 26 years ago, and to this town 10 years ago with my wife Nasiba and our 2 kids, who had the opportunity to grow here and go through our wonderful school systems. I have substantial experience since then with the town government, with working with various boards, various committees, 7 years at Appropriations Committee, 2 years with Growth Study Committee, and currently with Planning Board and CPC. On the professional side, I have been executive leader for decades, and currently I'm serving as Head of Data Engineering and Innovation with Mass General Brigham. And I have an undergrad in engineering, MBA in finance, and deep into strategy development and execution. What I believe my true value add would be for the board are two areas. First, I believe my strategic perspective and my municipal finance knowledge will be a great addition to the current board. And with my working and collaborative attitude with all the bodies and across the town will be an asset. And second, I will bring diversity and fresh perspective, which I believe will be very much critical to build that collaborative platform for our town to move into the future. And I want to work with each and everyone, listening to the town residents, working with everyone regardless of party, regardless of your background, and make our town a success. So please vote for me on May 16 as your next select board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have for Board of Assessors. It's a 3-year position. There's 1 opening. Peter Mimo, Democrat.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you to the Hopkinton's Women's Club for this opportunity. My name is Peter Mimo. I'm the Democratic candidate for the Board of Assessors position. And just a brief introduction, my family and I moved to Hopkinton in 2015. I'm a lifelong resident of Massachusetts and a proud resident of our great state. I've had the opportunity so far as a resident to graduate a son through our wonderful school system. I have another son in our middle school system as well. I have had a lifelong dedication into my career to public service. I've been working for the Commonwealth now for 20 years and as an attorney, and I also effectively enforce our civil rights laws and litigate civil rights complaints and assure that that everyone has an equal opportunity in employment and in housing, and in addition to that, public accommodations. And I've learned over the last 20 years that the value of public service and the value of providing services to the public in Massachusetts, and the importance of transparency and accountability, which I would hope to bring and would bring as a member of the Board of the Assessors if I'm fortunate enough to get your vote on May the 16th. I think that it's a terrific opportunity to continue to serve my community. When I lived in Northbridge with my family, I had the opportunity to serve on our personnel board there. I also had the opportunity to serve in our town manager search committee, and it was a terrific opportunity to engage in my community then, and the Board of Assessors is an opportunity to do so here as well, and I look forward to having that opportunity if I'm fortunate enough to have that vote. Please come out and vote for me on May the 16th, and also please come out and vote for the other fine Democratic candidates that we have for both selectmen and also our select board, and also for our school committee in particular. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, for school committee, for the 3-year position where you can vote for 1, our first candidate is Nancy Richards Kavanaugh, candidate for re-election, Democrat.
Thank you, and thank you to the Women's Club for hosting this wonderful event this year. I know it's always a good service to our community, and also thank you to HCAM for broadcasting and recording so that people can see it who are not able to be here in person. So I am running for re-election for the school committee. I was first elected in 2016, and when I came to running for school committee, I came because I had a commitment to the welfare and educationally of all students. In 2016, things were a little bit different than they are now. The past couple of years were obviously not predicted in terms of what we were looking to do in the school committee. But some of the values that I ran for then, I still hold true now. One is thinking about the needs of all of our students. Another is looking at the growth that we have in our district and trying to plan proactively. I know a lot of people are aware that we have a project going on right now that is on the town meeting warrant, actually, for an addition at Marathon to add another 4 classrooms. That was approved a year ago, but because of cost increases, we're looking to get a little bit more money so we can actually build it. But we're also looking at Elmwood and beyond. We're expecting in the next 10 years about 700 more students. That's a lot, and we want to make sure that we have the facilities management, the campus planning, and that we're able to continue to attract and retain the teachings and the faculty that we have here, because we know that our staff is really one of our most valuable assets and part of what makes Hopkinton great. I am a social worker. I have a master's degree in social work, and mental health is what my career has been based on. And I have seen both professionally and what I see kind of happening in our schools that we already had a youth mental health crisis going on before the pandemic. Right now we have coming out of that kids experiencing greater social emotional difficulty, greater learning gaps than we've seen before. And I am committed to working to kind of bring us back to a strong place. So thank you. I ask for your vote on May 16th.
Thank you. For the two-year position on school committee where you can vote for one, first we have Ashley Fogg.
My name is Ashley Fogg, and I'm running for election to the Hopkinton School Committee for the two-year term vacancy. I would consider it to be an incredible privilege, honor, and responsibility to serve as school committee member for the Hopkinton Public Schools. I grew up in Hopkinton and attended the schools. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Applied Legal Studies from Suffolk University in Boston, where I graduated magna cum laude and received accolades for the top position in my graduating class. Before making the decision to stay home with my children, I worked as a paralegal in law firms in Boston and Woburn. My legal background and experience provides a unique asset different to any current school committee member or candidate, and I believe would equip me very well to serve on the school committee. Knowing Hopkinton would be a wonderful place to raise our family, my husband and I moved back to Hopkinton in 2018. We have 3 children, 2 of whom currently attend Elmwood and Marathon schools, and a 4-year-old who will attend in the fall of 2023. I'm very active in the schools and have a personal relationship with many of the staff members, teachers, and principals. I am often the room parent for my children's classrooms and thoroughly enjoy serving and helping teachers throughout the school year. Currently, I am part of the HPTO Appreciation Committee and work with another parent to organize all the appreciation events for the teachers and staff at Marathon Elementary. My firsthand experience of having children in Hopkinton gives me real insight into the issues, concerns, and priorities many parents and community members may have regarding our schools. I hope to take this real-time experience and use it in making informed decisions as it affects the Hopkinton Public Schools and our children. The pandemic has been difficult for our community and school district. While differing points of view are important in making well-rounded decisions and advancement, division is not. And if elected, I promise to promote civility, compassion, and use common sense in my decision-making. My top priorities as I run for election are 1, the mental health crisis facing our children, 2, managing effectively the exponential growth we have seen in our student population in the last several years, and 3, continuing the excellence of Hopkinton Public Schools academics. It would be my privilege and honor to serve on the Hopkinton School Committee. Please consider me when you vote on May 16th.
Thank you. Next, for the two-year position on the school committee is Holly Moran, Democrat.
Thank you.
Thanks to the Women's Club and HCAM for this. I once took a wine glass painting class with the Women's Club, and I hope my speech goes better than that did. I'm Holly Moran. I'm running for the 2-year seat on the school committee. I've lived in Hopkinton for almost 20 years, and I grew up next door in Holliston, but I have tons of family that have lived here for decades. I'm the mom of a 9-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter, and I've been with my husband, Matt, for 15 years. We love this community for so many reasons, and the outstanding schools definitely rank high on that list. I believe that our growing student population and the pandemic offer many opportunities for our school and community to create an atmosphere of empathy and support. My background is broad. I have undergrad degrees in chemistry and philosophy. I have a master's in applied statistics, a master's in social work, and I'm currently a doctoral candidate for a PhD in behavioral health, which is essentially public health. My entire career has been dedicated to helping others, first in pharma and applications development, and then as a clinical social worker. I've provided private counseling to clients from 3 to 85 years old and practiced as an in-school social worker both in Milford and Franklin Public Schools. I practiced in Hopkinton, working under Denise Hildreth in the Hopkinton Youth and Family Services. So I have kind of an insider's view on what kind of challenges the families in our community face. My personal academic and professional experiences would be an asset to the school committee. I have extensive background in research and evidence-based practices, which are essentially the foundations of education and mental health. I'm currently running a research study at Brigham and Women's Hospital involving about 500 kidney transplant patients, which I'm running by myself, so it's a project management background. And I volunteered in different ways to help my neighbors. I also managed a 6-figure budget and over 100 volunteers as the president of the PTA. I hope to have your vote on May 16th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For the school committee opening for 1 year, where you can vote for one, first up is Jennifer Devlin, Democrat.
Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted the Democrat there. So yes, my name is Jen Devlin. There's only 2 people who call me Jennifer, and now maybe 3, and they're my parents, so I'm Jen. But I'm running for the 1-year seat on the school committee. I served previously on the school committee from May of 2017 to May of 2020, or September of 2020, actually. We got pushed out a couple of months because of the pandemic. And like many of you have been paying very close attention over the last year and a half to the agendas and decisions of the school committee. I think this 1-year seat is very unique for lots of reasons. We don't often have a 1-year seat available on the school committee, but specifically I think that the first year on the board is a time when you're learning so much about the operations of the board and the state statutes that govern how the board is supposed to operate. And so with a 1-year seat, I feel like there's not a lot of onboarding time. So I think I'm the right person for this position because I've had 3.5 years already. Hopefully my learning curve will be sort of shallow. That's what I'm hoping for. As we emerge from the pandemic, I'm also pretty confident that the issues that were pressing pre-2020 are going to reappear as the focal points for the school committee. Specifically things that other folks here have mentioned: growth in numbers and diversity of our student population, the replacing the Elmwood School and that building project and the ongoing building projects on the other buildings, and the budgetary concerns that go along with those things. Luckily, I served on the Growth Study Committee in town up until 2021 and the Elementary School Building Committee for Marathon School, so I think I'm well suited for 2 of those pressing issues, and I think it helps position me to help the board in the coming year. I also work in the public schools. I work at the Southborough Public Schools as tech integration specialist and hold a doctorate in curriculum leadership from Northeastern. So I think sort of my background from my previous time serving on the school committee and my current career situation kind of positions me to help out the board over the next year. So I very, very respectfully request your consideration and your vote in May. Thank you.
Thank you. For school committee, the 1-year position, where you can vote for one, Jared Prey, Democrat.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jared Prey, and I'm running for the 1-year seat on school committee. I've lived in Hopkinton for 17 years with my wife Jessica and our 3 little girls. So I have a 4th grader, a 1st grader, and a 2-year-old who will actually be Hopkinton High School class of 2038. And yes, I did the math. So Hopkinton schools are something special. It's a reason my wife and I ended up here, probably a reason why many others have ended up here as well. For the past 2 years, we've asked our children of this district to disproportionately shoulder the weight of COVID restrictions. For the next year, we really need to help the children kind of gain what they've lost, both socially but also academically, but also thinking about how can we improve where we have fallen short. It's not the time for the school committee to kind of take a breath, kind of sit back and, it's only a 1-year position for this, but really kind of get after it. There's just too much to accomplish. Specifically, 1, I think investment by this community has made this a top 10 district. I think it's really important the next school committee commits to maintaining the standard of excellence, but also look at where we can improve. Doing more to support all kinds of learners, students with learning disabilities and special needs, as well as the needs of advanced learners, particularly those at younger ages, is a great place to begin. Secondly, we've spoken a little bit about it tonight, you've heard it already, but recent and projected enrollment growth, really have a good plan and execute on the plan for future space needs. Lastly, we must be diligent in ensuring that every student sees our school as a safe and positive environment. So to this role, I bring a business mindset, a passion for education, but also uniquely amongst this next school committee, the perspective of that of a father. So with that, I ask you to consider voting for Jared Pray for school committee on May 16th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For Board of Library Trustees, there's a 3-year position, and you can vote for 2. David Dollenmeyer was not able to be here, and he asked me to read his statement, so I'll read it for you now. Quote, "In late 2021, I was appointed to complete an unexpired term as trustee of the library, and now I hope to win your votes for a full 3-year term. As a professor of German language and literature at Worcester Polytech Institute and a professional translator of German fiction and nonfiction, mostly biographies and art history, I've had a lifelong love of books and reading and a deep connection to the library as a place that provides all our residents free access to the joy, pleasure, and information that books and other media offer. I'm also pleased that the library is a meeting place for town clubs and organizations. I look forward to continuing to support Nancy Hill, the new director of the library, and to working with the other trustees, the Friends of the Library and the Library Foundation, to maintain and expand the many programs offered there. I'm especially impressed by the conversation sessions offered to learners of English as a second or third or fourth language." End of quote. Moving on, for Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, for the 3-year position where you can vote for 1, Cynthia S. Steimer, candidate for re-election, Democrat.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I'd like to spend one moment looking back over the 3 years that I've spent on the commission, and I'd like to show my appreciation and how proud I am of the director and the coordinators of Parks and Rec Department. They did an amazing job throughout the COVID pandemic. They did a great job finding ways to provide programming, some new programming as well. They found a way to do play groups. It was just fantastic what they were able to accomplish. I want to make a mention of the parks. Parks in town are very important to me. We were able to get all new playground equipment in EMC Park, and the dog park is open on Fruit Street. That took quite a while to accomplish. Also, we have an ad hoc group working on improvements to Sandy Beach. How you buy your stickers is new and different. How we will staff is different. And then, of course, we are trying improvements to the boat ramp and other things like that. But the centerpiece of the Parks and Rec properties is really our town common. It is where we all come together for the concerts. It has the farmers market, poly arts, and many, many of our festivals. So we care about that in terms of the trees and the grass. That's what we're working there. But looking forward, the demands on these sports fields is high. The turf fields on Fruit Street have lived out their life. And we need to replace those fields for the safety of all of our children. So please be aware when that comes up at town meeting vote. Thank you. Good night.
So next up, for Housing Authority, 5-year position where you can vote for 1, Nancy Draw, Democrat.
Thank you to the Women's Club for putting this on, and for HCAM for having me also. This is my first time running in an elected position, so this is pretty exciting to me and lots of fun so far. Anyway, my name is Nancy Draw, but I'm mostly known by my nickname as Punky. I'm a candidate for the 5-year term at the Housing Authority, which I currently serve as an appointed member to finish out a former member's term. I was born in Hopkinton in 1954, but have moved back and forth from Framingham to Hopkinton over the years, and I finally settled back here permanently in 1991 on Davis Road. I really wanted to become involved in the community at that time, so I started out volunteering at the Senior Center as a computer tutor and a member of the Volunteer Advisory Committee and lunch hostess. I also reported activities from the center on HCAM TV station's news program and wrote weekly columns for The Independent, Hop News, and The Crier. 2 years ago, I was appointed as a member of the Council on Aging Board, serving as secretary. I love being part of this community and have been active in many other volunteer positions, such as the Veteran Celebration Committee for many years, the School Council at Center School, and I was recently trained as a Dementia Friends champion, and I'm volunteering to do dementia sessions for the Age Dementia Friendly Initiative in Hopkinton. I have made many long-lasting friendships over the years. So as a resident of Hopkinton Housing myself for over 21 years, I've attended most of the monthly board meetings, so I know firsthand knowledge of what our needs are. And so now, as a member of the Hopkinton Housing Board, I am able to provide a direct voice and be an active advocate for the other residents. We are currently working on some major capital projects, such as renovating the laundry room, adding more trees that have been torn down, and installing cameras on the property. So if I'm elected, I will continue to work with the board and the Housing Authority Director. Thank you.
Just in the nick of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect timing. The next and final opening is for constable. It's a 2-year position, and you can vote for one. So the first candidate is John Cardillo, who's unable to be here, and he asked me to read a statement. So I'll read it right now. Quote, "I've lived in Hopkinton for the past 25 years and have been involved in many activities in town. I've coached softball and was an assistant Little League baseball coach, and also the Hopkinton Little League board member as an equipment manager. I was involved in the Hopkinton High School cheerleading as their official photographer and part-time fundraiser. For the past 3.5 years, I've been a photographer for the Hopkinton Independent, an experience I have enjoyed immensely. I also celebrated my 10th year as a volunteer at the Boston Marathon in Hopkinton in the Corrals. Both my children have benefited from their education here in Hopkinton. My wife and I loved raising our children in Hopkinton because of the opportunities it afforded them and the multitude of activities provided by the town, which has kept them engaged and involved. I decided to retire after 30 years in high tech, shortly after the passing of my wife Cindy to cancer in October 2017. I might have chosen to leave Hopkinton at that time, but decided to stay. Hopkinton is an inviting, vibrant community, becoming increasingly diverse, one that continues to grow in population as well as opportunity. Please allow me the opportunity to give back to our wonderful community as your constable. Sincerely, John Cardillo." The next candidate for the constable position, the 2-year constable position, where you can vote for one, is Beth Malloy, the Democrat.
Hi, my name is Beth Ann Malloy, and I'm running for the position of constable in the town of Hopkinton. I moved to Hopkinton in 1995, joining my husband, who purchased our first house here in 1991. We found Hopkinton to be a very compassionate, safe, and caring community. My husband Mike and I have both enjoyed living and working here in Hopkinton. I worked for the Hopkinton Public Schools system for 9 years, primarily with our intensive special needs students. For the past 11 years, I have been employed by the Michael Lisnow Respite Center here in town, and I gain so much of my inspiration from my friends and family at the Respite Center. Our family was very involved in Scouts in town. I was Assistant Cub Master of Pac 97. I started 2 programs here in town, one called Lost in the Woods and the other was called Hopkinton Helping Hands. Camp Sunshine in Casco, Maine is an amazing place where I volunteered for 11 years. Camp Sunshine provides both respite and fun to children with life-threatening illnesses and their families. I spent years volunteering in town with Project Just Because, Serenity House, the Cultural Arts, the various drama programs. Our family has enjoyed dog rescue and have fostered 20 dogs, several of whom live in our community. Most recently, I became a compassionate care companion over at Milford Regional. The idea behind this program is that nobody dies alone. I served on the Affordable Housing Fund Committee for 8 years, working with the Planning Board with future developers to provide units in lieu of cash payouts. I look forward to further serving the town of Hopkinton as constable, so please consider me on May 16th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last candidate for the two-year position for constable, where you could vote for one, is Michael Terosian, unenrolled.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to the Hopkins Women's Club for continuing this fantastic program. As she said, I'm Mike Terosian, running unenrolled for the town constable position. I moved to town in 1987, coming from Malden, where I grew up. So I've been in Massachusetts my whole life, loving the Commonwealth as some other candidates, and fell in love with this town the day I moved in. Attended just about every single town meeting, enjoyed this government. Growing up, all we had was representative government, and when you found out that you could actually say something and make a change, that's when I fell in love and found out everyone there was a volunteer, not getting paid big bucks to be a politician. So I thought that was cool. My volunteer experience with the town has been, I sat on the youth commission for a few years back in the 90s. I'm also a volunteer firefighter in town. I've been doing that for 32 years. I served a short time on the auxiliary police, other groups, Hopkins Little League, executive board member, coach, the Hopkins Ashland Pop Water Board as a coach and executive board member. Volunteered at Hop TV, which was before HCAM, and then volunteered for HCAM shortly after, which I'm now happy to say that I'm very happily employed here and enjoy bringing television programs to the community. I've also I sat on the St. Paul's Building Committee for a few years, and currently sitting on the Interstage Left Theater Production Committee. I'm running for the 2-year spot vacated by the passing of my friend Frank Durso, and I want to honor him by filling his shoes. I feel the knowledge of the town and its rich history will make me the best candidate to fulfill the function of town constable. I hope for your vote on May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let's now give all the candidates a round of applause. So it's time for the second portion of our program, the question and answer segment. For members of the studio audience who want to ask a question, please step up to the mic to my right and state your name, your address, and your question. If you prefer to submit a written question for me to ask, note cards are available on the back table at the back of the room. In addition, viewers at home can send in questions for the candidate by dialing call line number directly displayed on your screen or by emailing us at live@hcam.tv. Responses from candidates must be kept to a maximum of 2 minutes. If a question is posed to a specific candidate, I will offer response time to all other candidates for that office as well. And lastly, the privilege of being the first person in a group to answer will begin alphabetically and rotate as subsequent questions are asked. We're ready for the first question. Don't rush. Someone must have a question. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. Yes. We do have a question. Hi.
Hi, my name is Pam Duffy, and I live at 21 Oliver Lane in Hopkinton. And I have a question for two of the members of the Board of Selectmen that are running. So for Mary Jo, I have heard a current member of the Select Board question why John Catino would want to run for the board when he knows that the board would be against him and voting in a block against him. I am concerned because the understanding I got from this conversation was that the board is unified in its opinions and voting patterns. Wouldn't the town benefit from someone who could represent the opinions of the citizens that may not align with the opinions of the other board members?
I have no idea where you heard something like that. The board hasn't even discussed together Mr. Catino's running. We welcome any and everybody to run for election. This is a free country. And I have no idea where those things came from. I'm being really honest. I mean, I've heard a few board members that are no longer on board on saying they don't know why John Catino was running again. But other than that, we are a very busy, conscientious, working Board of Selectmen, and our total attitude is for the good of the town. We don't discuss individuals. We never have, and I don't think we ever will.
I'm going to give the other candidates the opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Well, I really don't know what to say. I believe that if everybody goes into a negotiation with the thought that the person on the other side has the best interests of the town or whatever it is at heart, that things can get done. I think back to when I was on ZAC, well, I'm still on ZAC, but I was a chair for about 10 years. And my friend Sandy Altamira was on the other side. And she and I used to look at zoning problems from completely different sides. Yet we both believed in that theory, that we both loved the town and that we wanted the best. So she would start from here and I would start from there. And immediately we brought it down to 2 or 3 things that we had to work out with the rest of the group. And then we knew that if she got through it and if she went through it and I went through it, that it would most likely pass town meeting. Because it's really important to know what the other half of the town is thinking. I needed to know what the left was thinking. She needed to know what the right was thinking. And that's how we got things done. So it's tough to be on a board that may work as a block or something like that. But I just hope that that's not the truth.
It's not happening.
Would you like to respond to that?
Sure, yeah. I just want to focus on the positivity of the volunteers who come to these boards and work for this town and the betterment of our lives. And I truly believe that Hopkinton has a unique, talented group of volunteers who work on all the boards, spend time away from their families, away from their money, incentive, whatever profession they are in, for the good of the town. Nobody comes here to hurt anyone or harm anyone. And that's my fundamental belief. I truly believe that. And having said that, we will have difference in opinions. We will have our various backgrounds and positions. And that's okay. That's what democracy is about. And let the best idea win. Let the best thing come out of it. And we want to focus on the future, on what we can build from here. We are a great town and we are at a great situation. We have great schools. We have safe environment. We have great natural resources, and foundation of our finance is very strong. Let's build on that, build a collaborative platform where everyone can work together and focus on the future. That's what my goal is, and I think we all want to focus on that. Now, there will be noise here and there, but we don't want to be distracted. As leaders, it is our responsibility to get out of that and stay above it and focus on the future, how we can build one Hopkinton, one community focused on the betterment of our lives. That's my goal, that's my focus, and that's, I think, everyone's who volunteer for this town.
Thank you. Did you have a second question?
Second question, yes. So my question is, given, well, this understanding that I had, that I heard from a member in this room, given this, what kind of difference do you think that you could make on the board for the town? So I would ask each person to be able to.
So we'll start with Mr. Mann.
So I believe, as I mentioned earlier, that my experience and expertise with various boards, especially financial, will add value to our budgetary oversight and budgetary insights. And if you have heard our town manager and various sessions, and everyone has been very transparent. And the latest budget committee report also shows that there are some challenges looming on our budget situation. Obviously, we have so much growth and so much demand for various services. School has capacity challenges that we are going through. We are remediating those, but it's becoming obvious. And right now in the board or in the budget summary, they're projecting that 2024 and beyond, we are going to fall short of our budget. So I believe my budget experience and my executive leadership that is focused on strategic planning, which we need, will make a difference and add to the value of our current board and current leadership. And having said that, I want to also focus on planning for the future. I do want to build the Hopkinton for the future, where we are going to focus on post our downtown corridor, where we are going to manage the growth that we are seeing. We have seen exponential growth over the last 7 years, and it's going to taper down a bit, but there will be more. So there will be more demand for police, fire, and all the services. So we need to work on that and build a strategic plan, and then execute on that with everyone's help. And that's where I think my forte and my strength will come in, and I want to make a difference and add value using that. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I think where my value comes in is that I have done 6 budgets and sitting on the Board of Selectmen. And every year that it seems like they predict that we are going to have a shortfall. But we always manage to get through. We've got great professionals that work there, that that's why we have budget negotiations. Everybody sends in their budget projections and everything, but once we meet with all the heads of the departments, they all come back with, some of these were wishes and wants, and then they turn out to be, well, they can wait a year or two. And then there are also grants, and there are federal and state money that comes through. So we can do that. The other thing is that I see myself as an opposing view. Right now, there are 4 Democrats on the board. I would be the only Republican. Not that I think of myself as Republican, but a fiscal conservative. And I have been part of a team for 6 years that really has got a lot done. As I stated earlier, we got a library, a new DPW facility, a new school. We've got a lot of things done, and kicking off the downtown corridor project, which is going to change the whole town. And mostly the arrangement and the collaboration that I got together with the 26.2 Foundation, the town, and the BAA to increase the number of invitational entries, bringing us to bringing in extra hundreds of thousands of dollars to local charities. So it's my experience on the board and coming back with even more experience for being off of it for 2 years.
Thank you. Mayor Jo?
Hi, I don't think what party you belong to has anything to do with being on the select board, because everybody I know that's been on the select board, both parties, because I've been on for 3 years with a number of different people, and everybody has a different opinion, and that's a good thing for the board, because it makes for very interesting arguments, and it makes for consensus building that helps the town to move forward. And I don't know any member of the Board of Selectmen in the past 3 years or right now that doesn't have the town's future is in their heart, is what they really want to do. And we do have differences of opinion, and that's what makes everything work. We're a team. We work as a team. No one person runs the board. We all manage to give our opinions. We all manage to say what we feel, and we come out with I think, a good consensus for moving the town forward. And everybody cares. I've been in this town for over 40 years. I've had kids grow up and go through the schools who are now in their 40s, and I've made good friends, good neighbors, and I only care for Hopkinton. I care on how it's moving forward, on it's growing. And I was an assessor, so I've done the recap sheet, I've set tax rates, I've worked on budgets, and I've been doing it for the last 3 years too, and very much enjoying it. I like the financial aspect of it. But I also think that you need diversity on the board, and which we kind of have, and we need age differences and things, because we're bringing different perspectives. I mean, I'm bringing 40 years of living with the town and watching it grow. When I first came, there were under 8,000 people in this town. Now there's over 18. And that's a huge amount of growth. And I've been on all these boards and grown with the town, and I think that that is a good thing.
Thank you. All set?
Thank you.
Okay, we do have some emails sent in, and I'm going to ask school committee members Nancy Kavanaugh, Ashley Fogg, and Holly Moran to come up first. This is from Marissa Jones. Okay, the printing's really small, so these old eyes are going to strain a little. Thank you. I have them, but they can't wait, no? These questions are from the group HBS Parents for Full-Time School Reopening. We have designated questions for individuals, but can be used however is most useful for the event. Nancy Kavanaugh, considering the events of the last few months, including the surprise resignations of 2 school committee members, is there anything you think could have been handled differently to avoid some of the conflict within the body, and anything you think could have been done to alleviate some of the mounting tension within the community?
So, great question. So I would say one thing that I think would not replicate itself likely in another year, which is the extreme pressure that the school committee was on under the past 2 years, from the shutdown in 2020 through the opening into the hybrid mode to the then worrying about masks. The committee itself, there were a couple of difficult months. It was totally unexpected resignations. I would never cast any judgment on somebody who, having been through 2 years, of what we went through making decisions, decided for their own reasons that they wanted to step back. So I was not given any reason from those members. I appreciate all the work they put into it. And I'll also say that it wasn't just one faction against another. The school committee, as a body of 5, we voted different ways on different points. And the 3 remaining members who are on the committee, we actually only, of the 4 masking votes that we had, there was only one where all 3 of us agreed. So I think the tensions, if we had continued as a board of 5, my hope and what we had discussed shortly before the resignations was that we would have a facilitator come in to work with us to help to bridge some of the difficult time that we had been in and to help move us forward. My hope would be this summer, my plan, if I am reelected, would be to bring in somebody from the Mass Association of School Committees, of which we are a member and of which we can access their resources for free, to come in and to work and to do some team building with us and to help get people kind of understanding, because we will have a couple of new members, kind of what the role is and kind of how we can move forward in a productive way. Thank you for the question.
Ashley Fogg.
Sure.
As the pandemic pushed children onto screens and electronic devices for education, entertainment, and socialization, we saw an undeniable rise in youth mental health issues. Do you see this as a major concern impacting our schools, and what policies would you implement or avoid in order to help our students?
So I thought I was going to have to answer Nancy's question, so let me just switch gears for a second. Can you read the question one more time, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
As the pandemic pushed children onto screens and electronic devices for education, entertainment, and socialization, we saw an undeniable rise in mental health issues. Do you see this as a major concern impacting our schools, and what policies would you implement or avoid in order to help our students?
Right. So I think, as I said in my opening, mental health is a huge issue for kids. It was an issue before the pandemic, and it certainly is out of control now. I think that our kids were pushed onto screens as we thought it was necessary at the time to get out the education and the learning. But now knowing what we know now, I think that it would be good to remove the screens to a level that our kids are not completely being educated on that. I think being physically in the building, physically in front of a teacher, especially for elementary learners, is crucially important. I think a lot of the mental health and the bullying issues that we're seeing at the middle school are a result of kids being pushed into a bedroom for 2 years to a year and are being put on a screen in front of social media, in front of their education, and they weren't able to get that development that you typically get going to 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Those years are huge years of development. So I think, yes, I think while screens have an important role in education, and that's just technology, and there's definitely pros to technology, I think we need to get our kids back into the building and back in front of teachers and in front of live instruction.
Thank you. Holly Lynn Moran, you've been an outspoken advocate for pandemic policies publicly against a return to school, against a return to full-time school, and more recently, against the mask option policy. Your reasoning for these positions has been your own personal health status, insisting that you never leave your home because doing so would risk your life. You've now chosen to run for a very public position, one that will require you to be in places with unmasked people, including town meeting and the high school graduation. Should the public assume that you have changed your position and you now believe that one-way masking will keep you safe?
So if you're talking about a timeline of 2 years, the first year we knew nothing about COVID, nobody had vaccines, it was awful. Every day we'd hear about tons of deaths. Then the second year we had vaccines, but we didn't have any for our children. And at this point, I'm a very data-driven person. I look at the numbers and I say, well, it's safe for most people, and I go outside with an N95 mask because that is what experts in medicine do. And when I was advocating in the past about masking vulnerable people, it was not for myself, it was for the vulnerable people within the community. And that includes family members of vulnerable people because, as we know, our children can be vectors in the spread of disease, right? So science evolves, and I'm a person that, as I said, I'm data-driven, and I'm spent my whole, a career in science. So numbers mean a lot to me, and that's how I make my choices. I use evidence, I use data, and I use my own background in research and data analysis. So today, what we're talking about today is not like last year in April or the year before in April. We have layers of therapeutics. We have, we're almost going to get our kids under 5 vaccinated. We have boosters for kids from 5 to 11. We have so much more now than we did then. It is still dangerous for me, but I've been told by my doctor if I wear an N95 in a room that I should be safe. So that's what I follow. I follow science, I follow data, and I would not support universal masking at this time because of the data.
Thank you.
Could I make a follow-up to the question that was addressed to Ashley?
Sure.
So the one thing I do want to say is that our schools are fully open now and that we do have all of our clubs operating in person, all of our classes, kids are in person in the schools. I do think that the devices that kids were on, and I agree with Ashley, particularly in the middle school, kids when they were at home more, it was problematic. I have a 6th grader. I know from her group of friends that kids were using social media younger. They were exposed to things differently than what a 6th grader, a kid who was just coming into 6th grader now would have been a few years ago, where they would have had benefit of maybe more play dates, of more activities that were in person in addition to being in school every day. So I feel like we brought in a director of social emotional learning. We brought in additional adjustment counselors. We're working to try to help these kids recover from what was a very difficult 2 years for a lot of different reasons. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. Thank you for now.
Thank
There
you.
are more. But
Thank you.
Jared Prey and Jen Devlin, can you step up to the mic? Jared, your question is, what letter grade would you assign to the school committee for its performance during the past year, and why?
Tough question. So let's see. I think as I look back on the past year, look, it was a difficult year for everyone. So I think as I look at that, I'd say as far as the school committee performed, let's call it a C. Some things went well. Hopkinton should be better. We should have been on the leading edge of bringing students back to school. We should have been on the leading edge of removing masks. We should have been on the leading edge in face-to-face learning time. And the reality is, we were at the very end. We were the top 10% when students went back to school the first time the state evaluated it. We were in the bottom 10% for face-to-face time between students and teachers. They evaluated it a second time. We didn't go up, we went down. We went down below that bottom 10%. That's disappointing. I think as a town, we should expect more. As parents, we should expect more. And frankly, I think we need to do better.
Thank you. Jen, given that you have served on the school committee before and have decided to run again, can you speak to the high-profile votes of the last 2 years, including a return to hybrid school, a return to full-time school, and reinstating the mask option? How would you have voted on these issues if you had been on the committee during the last 2 years?
I know, that's a tricky question because we didn't know then what we know now, so I think, that's a little bit loaded, but I was on the, I can't remember what we called ourselves, but the reentry committee. Over this course of the summer and the early fall, we had a group of folks who, parents, teachers, school committee members, and folks that met and were divided up into sort of subcommittees of this reentry group. And folks were tasked with, should we go hybrid? How should the hybrid look like? Folks were tasked with masking seating in the classrooms. Folks were tasked with the lunchrooms and how that was going to play out. I can't remember the number of people that were on this group, but it was fairly large, 40 to 50 people divided into these subgroups, each working, and then coming back together and making recommendations to the school committee and to the superintendent. And so I appreciated the very sort of collaborative and sort of open approach that the school committee and the superintendent made to try to get input from the community. I think it's tricky because I think a lot of us were focused on our families and on our own situation at the time, so folks may not have participated for a whole host of reasons, and we were pretty fried from Zoom by then anyway. Little did we know we'd have another year of Zoom at that point, or almost a year of Zoom. But I think, it's hard to answer the question because I think with the information that we had at the time, I appreciated that we went maskless in November. We were the first school district, I believe, in the country. It was on NPR. My friend out in Seattle called me and she's like, are you Hopkinton, Massachusetts? And I was like, we are. She's like, you guys are unmasking? I'm like, we are. So I think, we made the right calls. We tried different options to try to see what was the best choice with the information that we had at the time. And I think we did well. But of course, in hindsight, you can always find out where you didn't do well, and you can look back and try to make sure you don't make those same mistakes next time around. If there ever is a next time around, hopefully in 150 years.
Thank you. This
Sure.
one is specifically for you, Jared Prey. And this is from Jamie Ronka. You and your wife scoffed at your child's music teacher's request for masks in their classroom in a Facebook group. How would you represent families who believe in the importance of masks and other mitigation efforts to keep the school safe after publicly making derogatory statements against them?
So to be clear, I definitely didn't A, scoff, or B, post in a Facebook group, because I do not post in Facebook groups. So I know that was not the case. However, in regards to masks, I think that it is extremely important that each individual has the opportunity to wear a mask and is respected for that decision, protected for that decision. So I think as we think of, each kid, and, it's the same for, a room such as this or any other room, that each person is allowed to make the decision that they need to make for their own safety. So, I feel very strongly that as we think about, bullying in the case of masks or bullying in any form at all, that it is extremely important that we protect each and every student in the school.
All right, we'll let you two sit down, but don't
Switch.
get comfy. So this question is for all the school committee candidates, so why don't we start with Nancy Richards Kavanaugh, and then we'll have Ashley and Holly on standby, and then when they yeah, go ahead up to the mic, and then when they're finished, Jennifer, Devlin, and Jared can come back up after they rest. Give you a chance to reflect on this question. Dr. Fauci has predicted another surge of COVID-19 in the fall-winter 22-23. How would you approach considering if mitigation measures need to be taken, such as masks, distancing? Has your opinion on masks and mitigation efforts changed since fall 2021? And this question is also from Jamie Ronka.
So, and you want me to answer that first? So,
yes,
I would say the fall of 2021, we were in a very different place. We didn't have vaccinations. We didn't have the therapeutics that we have available now. My position when we voted on masking in August of 2021 was that we should have universal masking in the schools at that time because we didn't know as much as we do now. I would anticipate that COVID is going to continue for a long time to come in various waves. I think we're hopefully getting to a point where we're learning to live with it. I know that people have been talking about the BA2 and the rise of that and now kind of coming back down, but there are, even if you look back to January, people in January, it was very difficult to get medication, and now I know people around town who have had COVID that are able to have oral medications called into their doctor. So it kind of looking ahead into the fall of 2022 and into 2023, it's impossible to know what the virus is going to do, but I find it unlikely that we would find ourselves in the same position that we found ourselves in the fall of 2021.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned in the last question, the way I approach every problem, especially when I'm talking about a problem that impacts an entire community of school people, like people that work in schools, like everybody in schools are impacted by these decisions. I would want to know what does the science tell us, right? Do we have, is the whatever variant spreading, does it have a response to our current vaccines? Are they helpful in fighting against it? Do we have therapeutics that work? Are our 0 to 5 kiddos fully vaxxed? Do we have new boosters for big kids? There's so many factors that go into these decisions. There's no way I could make a prediction of what I would say in September right now because things change so quickly, as we've seen over the past 2.5 years. I mean, as of right now, I would not recommend universal masking as a scientist, but maybe in the fall of next year, if it's really bad and our positivity rates jump as high as they were in the past couple of years, maybe it would be a masking thing. Or maybe it would be asking for special accommodations for particularly at-risk kids. Like maybe it's not a universal masking. Maybe we just need to protect some people that are at risk. Like there's such a broad spectrum of potential outcomes and potential ways of mitigating spread in the schools that I would have to say, let's look at all the data, let's talk to the stakeholders, and let's make sure that we do right by everybody in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley?
So I think everybody knows where I stand on masking. I stood before the school committee in February when the masking final vote to make masks optional. And I pleaded as a mom of children, young children, who I saw struggling really hard with masks. My children are 9, 7, and 4, and my 9 and 7-year-old were struggling to be focused on a mask all day instead of being focused on their education, from different things with rashes on their face to trying to get the right fit, to not understanding social cues, or teachers missed things that were going on because they couldn't read kids' faces. So I am 100% and completely for making it optional for kids for masking. I think that it should be a family's choice. I think that if you want to mask your child and you want to mask where you go, that's completely and 100% okay as well. But I do think it should be a family's choice on masking. And I think too, we kind of have to look at what we didn't know, but now what we do know. And we know that Omicron was spreading when the elementary kids were wearing masks, not at school, but just in general. And so I'm not necessarily in agreement that masking, especially our young learners, is the right solution for mitigation strategies. I think good hand washing, I think parents having accountability of not sending sick children to school and making that decision that we keep sick kids home as a better strategy as we move forward.
Thank you. Jennifer? Jen?
Thanks. Now there's only two again, right? Only two that come.
Down to two.
Thank you. You know, I kind of feel very similarly to Holly. I feel like it's hard to make a prediction when something has changed so dramatically over the last 2 years to try to think ahead 6 months from now. I mean, that's 25% of the time that we've already been in it kind of thing. That's a big chunk of time. So many things can change. So it's hard. It's hard. Of course, we would love to say that we're moving in the right direction. Kids are going to keep going to school. Kids aren't going to need to wear masks unless they choose to do so. That's the direction we hope to be going in, sort of back to normal as much as possible. But if all of a sudden case rates, skyrocket, hospital beds fill, and we're looking at a situation that we looked at in, late 2020, then we'd have to revisit the situation and make a good decision based on the information we have then. So hopefully it is another 150 years before we have to deal with this, or more. But
right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jared. Frank?
Excellent. So I think we rewind the clock, think about where we were 2 years ago. Understood, masks make sense. It was the right thing to do. Where we sit today, the mitigation measures we have in place, we have an antiviral, we have an antibody that appears to be effective. We know a lot more about how dangerous this virus is, and particularly with Omicron being a little bit less dangerous with Delta and the native variant. I'm not in favor of universal masking. I think it's very important that people have the choice. I think it's very important that if students and their families choose to wear a mask, that decision is respected and protected. Aligned with my earlier comment about bullying, I think it's extremely important that nobody's making comments about a student who chooses to wear a mask. Again, that right should be protected, but I'm not in favor of universal masking.
Thank you. So we'll take a break and ask the select board candidates to come up for a question from Catherine Davenport regarding the Upper Charles Trail. The question is, the Select Board is tasked with evaluating the recommendations of the Upper Charles Trail Committee and approving the route of the Upper Charles Trail through Hopkinton. Residents have voiced significant opposition to the UCTC's proposed route along and crossing Hayden Row multiple times. First, what are your thoughts on the UCTC's proposed Hayden Row segment? Second, given the Select Board's responsibility to oversee the UCTC, what will you do to ensure that the UCTC fulfills its charge to, quote, outline the community's vision for the creation of the path and produce recommendations for the Select Board's consideration that align with the aspirations of the community? So we'll start with John.
Sure. I was on the UTTC board for several years because I believe that one of the crown jewels of this town is our trail network. And I thought it was very important to have a connecting trail that goes from Milford right through to Ashland. Milford's got a great trail. When I was on the planning board and board of selectmen, I was with my kids. I would always sort of hide as I went to go to use Milford's trail because we really didn't have one. We had a center trail that was half done, and it was great that we used to buy up small tracts of land and try and connect the dots. And every time we'd buy a dot, we'd say maybe we can connect it from here to there to here to there. We might be able to get to Ashland. We might be able to get to Milford, and there were always some obstacles in the way. what just happened recently, we had two groups, the Trails Committee and the Upper Charles Trails Committee, that were almost at each other's throats. And there were two really great groups that wanted to do a good thing. And they both believed in trails. And I really think that the Board of Selectmen should have stepped in earlier to give them some guidance, because both these boards are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And it's tough to make a hard decision on which way that you want to go, but the board should have stepped in and made a choice of what they thought the best thing was. It's almost a moot point now because the UTTC pulled their recommendation, pulled their warrant article for money. But it is important that we connect these dots and get this done. We've been working on it for years, and the other towns did have a leg up on us by having the rail trail. But we've got to connect these dots, and the Board of Selectmen has to step up and make some choices, piss off a few people, excuse the term, but get it done and get our main trail through.
Shahid.
Thank you. First off, I'm a big fan of trails, and that's the beauty of our town. We want trails, and we really are looking forward to completion of this 8-mile trail in near future. And I was talking to various experts from the trail committee and others, and obviously they've been working on the trail with the direct guidance in some ways from the select board for almost 10 years. And I hear frustrations that it may take another 10 years, and some may say 20 years to solve it. So my first comment is that we really need to get all our heads together, get the experts, get the analysis, get their point of view, and also listen to our residents. But we need to start to form up influence and our opinions in a productive way so we can solve this. And the way to solve it is, I think, banking on the experts. That's the first thing I do. I'm not always, I do not have expertise in everything, and I'm sure everyone would say the same thing. So build the case based on the expertise of the right people and the data. But having said that, we, as a resident, want to make sure that our voices are heard. And in that case, it is sometimes difficult to make choices. And the best path for that is like anything else, the path of least harm and most benefit. And I know this may sound theoretical, but this is something we need to bring into our practice through our thought leadership and through our analysis and collaboration across. Now, having said that, the ones that are at hand, from my understanding of what I've heard and talking to the residents, I believe that one already have expert opinions, the Hayden Row one, that has more crossing the road option is not as safe or is the best option from the experts. And again, I'm not claiming myself to be an expert, but as a leader, I believe that we need to sway the path towards the resolution, talking to experts, talking to residents, building our thought leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Well, when you appoint boards or you appoint commissions, you expect them to do the work that you appoint them to do. And both of these are working very hard. The process is what was questionable. They had, and when they did the public showing of, which is done before it goes to the select board, at the Elmwood School, when the people came out and said, no, this isn't good, and we don't like it, and we don't want it, and that is what should happen. Now, I'm glad to announce that as today, actually yesterday, there was a meeting held between the two factions, and the town manager and a couple others said, look, you guys have got to come together on something, and we're going to move on to the future. And as a result, the head of one and the head of the other are moving together to get a grant to move this thing forward, and that is good news for all of us. But nothing wrong was done. Each commission, each faction was to do a particular job. The Board of Selectmen had not received a plan yet. That plan that they had was to be brought to the public and then brought before us. And at the public meeting, things changed. And that's a good thing. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. So now they are working together to get a grant, and I will be happy to see the trails done and to use them myself.
Thank you. Stick around. This question is from Darlene Hayes, 1 3rd Road. I recently heard directly from the town manager that an additional 4.3%, near $400K, in additional funding resources has been allocated in the town budget above salaries, benefits, raises, and capital expenses to supporting our police, even during a global pandemic. The town continues to invest in these vital public service and safety resources. Can you address false rumors of defunding the police that are circulating in town? So let's start with, you want to start, Mary Jo?
Sure. I have never heard a word said by our select board today and our past select board that I worked with for 2 years. I've never heard the words defunding the police. We have done absolutely nothing. If you go back and look in the record and you look at the meetings, we have done nothing but support the police department. We have hired new hires. We have done everything we can to support the police department. These rumors are exactly that. They're rumors, and I don't know where they're coming from, but this Board of Selectmen and any of their meetings has never, ever, ever once mentioned defunding the police or did an article or had a discussion or brought forth anything of that nature that is going to defund our police department. This Board of Selectmen supports the police 100%.
Thank you. Shahudal?
Thank you. Obviously, I think the data shows that there's support for the police, and we are proud to have our police who has kept our town so safe that we are one of the safest, if not the safest town in the nation. And I haven't heard of defunding police in action or in any form of discussion by the leaders that I see and work with on select board. But one thing I definitely want to also emphasize that we want to continue to support our police because this is the fabric of our society to maintain our security. The very notion that I can press 911 and expect someone at my door in few minutes to jump in with whatever problem I may have to solve it is a huge, huge advantage and privilege. And we should not, and we do not take it lightly. And having said that, I believe that our compensation, our benefits for police and first responders, there's opportunity to emphasize more, to make it more competitive. And we discussed it actually in planning board, and we are looking at how we can combine our affordable housing with our incentivized programs for police force, our first responders, fire, and eventually and veterans to take advantage of the affordable housing and other funds to purchase or rent houses in this town. And I think these are the thoughts that we need to bring in to show our care for our first responders and also make our town's compensation package more competitive for our first responders. And there's more work to do. We are talking to CPC and others. I'm talking to them to look for opportunities how we can combine it together. And it can help the first responders. It can help our affordable housing as well. I just wanted to do that plug in. But what my point is that we want to bring in various thought leadership on top of what our great minds are doing today and add to that for helping our first responders. Thank you.
John?
Being a police officer must be one of the toughest jobs to do in the world. You know, police officers are out there enforcing rules and laws that other people make, and they have to take the brunt of all the pushback that they get by doing that. You know, there's been a national narrative that police are bad. Well, we've got the #1 safest community in the country right now. We have had it for several years. And during some tragedies that happened in our town and around the country, our police department was looked at by many as not doing their job correctly. And many police officers took offense to that because they worked very hard to get us to be the #1 safest community. And they were just, and many believed that they were doing a very good job and should have had support of many of the people above them and didn't feel as though that they got the support and respect and love that we should give to every police officer, thanking them for their service as much as possible. And every day thanking them because they do keep us safe and they keep our property values up and really take very good care of us. So whenever we see a police officer in town, we should thank them and show them that same respect.
Thank you. This is for the, next question is for the school committee, so why don't we have Nancy Richards Kavanaugh come up, and Ashley Fogg and Holly Moran. And then we'll go with the other ones because it's a general question. Okay. Sort of. This question is from Jim Maribel of 10 Ledgestone Drive in Hopkinton, and for all school committee members. We are all aware of how student debt of 1.5 is that trillion, is having a dramatic impact on students who overextended to pay the inflated costs of higher education in this country. A review of the Hopkinton High School Program of Studies for 21-22 lists no information or courses centered on personal finance. Freshman, sophomore, and junior seminars also do not list any topics around personal financial learning. As a member of the school committee, will you commit to pushing the superintendent to include meaningful personal finance coursework for every student that graduates Hopkinton High School? If not, can you provide your reasons as to why not? So it's a yes/no question, and then reasoning.
Do you want to answer first?
Okay, so why don't we start with, who do we start with? We'll start with Holly.
There's this great joke that you see all over the place, like, I don't know how to do my taxes, but I know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? So I think that we should absolutely be giving our children real life lessons, like, how do I do my taxes? How do I balance my budget? How do I figure out how much money I have to spend on housing versus food versus entertainment? Like, even in college, kids don't really get that education unless they're like an econ major, right? As a chemistry major, like, you got me, I don't know. I obviously use everything I've learned, but all the things that I've learned on personal finance, I've done on my own. Even applied statistics is not really a good financial background, right? So I think that I would definitely be on board. I would definitely be on board with having real life skill sets, particularly for our kids, because the expectation is everybody goes to college, but that's not the only path you can take. You can become an apprentice for a plumber, an electrician, like all of these wonderful jobs that don't require college. You want these kids to have skill sets beyond just learning that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell that they can use in real life every day, right? So I would absolutely support that.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yes, a real strong yes. I think kids should definitely be taught financial literacy. I think it goes alongside with even the basics of reading and math. I think that growing up and not having those classes myself gave me a disservice as I entered college and I entered young adulthood, and not being able to manage all the things that I should have been able to manage. My parents set me up really well, and I was able to fall back on them sometimes and be able to have them help me. But I definitely think that schools should lay the foundation for that financial literacy. I think if you lay that foundation, it requires them and it allows them to build strong money habits and avoid mistakes that then lead into lifelong money struggles. I think if we can get it back into the high school or even the middle school and teach that financial literacy, I think that it would set up kids a lot better, and that they wouldn't necessarily need to fall back on their parents, or they would be set up in a better situation. I agree with Holly that I think that we should teach taxes, we should teach how to create a monthly budget. We should talk about credit cards and what that means, that you don't just take out a credit card and you get to run it up and not have to pay for it. I think a lot of kids don't necessarily even understand the student loan process. They're going into college and not realizing that this money needs to be paid back whether or not they graduate or not. So I definitely think that financial literacy should be taught in school.
Thank you. Nancy?
So I would agree with both of my candidates next to me here, that I do believe financial literacy is important. I think it's a little bit more, it's a larger problem than just offering a course in the high school, in that I think one of the things we're finding in looking at graduates going out into the world is college is not the only path that people have towards success. And to that end, we've brought in some career, vocational, and technical education through a grant to be able to offer some more internships and more technical type skills. We also have dual enrollment, which helps kids that want to do some dually enrolled high school courses through local community college, which allows them to have some credits getting out to hopefully reduce debt in terms of them going to college down the road. We also do have the ability for high school students to take online courses through tech, which is a collaborative. They're not Hopkinton classes, but Hopkinton students are able to enroll in specific classes that they're interested in that the high school may not offer. So and I know this question actually also came up at Know Your Vote a couple nights ago, and I know that the superintendent had said that that was something she would go back to speak with the high school principal about. The way courses come forward to us is they come, the principal at the high school, Mr. Bishop, he works with a lot of student interest and puts the program of studies together, and then it comes to the school committee to look at. I certainly would want to give that feedback, that that's something that people are interested in and would be important in terms of real world skills.
Thank you. Jennifer Devlin and Jared Craig, would you like to address that question? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Got to the mic first.
Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, I have to echo what has already been said. I think probably we'd be crazy to say no to that question. But I was also going to bring up what Nancy said at the Know Your Vote 2 nights ago. It also came up, and Dr. Kavanaugh said she's going to bring it back to Jen Parsons, the assistant superintendent, who's pretty much in charge of curriculum for the district, and see where it goes. And I think that it also potentially presents what could be kind of a cool community school partnership, because, you know, as I'm listening to folks talk here, I mean, this was all taught in my house. It was something that my parents made sure I did not leave home for college until I knew how to balance a checkbook, until I understood how a credit card worked. And so if there are families who either don't feel comfortable or able to teach that to their kids, I think there's ways that we could partner with. You know, we got a lot of financial institutions in town. We got a lot of folks who work in finance in town. We got a lot of folks who, you know, so we might be able to find groups of folks who would partner with the schools to make this happen for high school kids and maybe for middle school kids too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jared?
Sure. Yeah, with the qualifications around the curriculum aside, love the idea.
Yeah.
You know, so much of what we do, you know, what we do as a school is preparing students to be good young adults and, you know, stereotypical term, like good members of society. This is just another area of it. So, you know, very succinctly, I love the idea.
Thank you. I'll keep you up here.
Excellent. Even better.
So this is for the 4 school committee. This is from Mike Terosian. The 4 school committee members that are not currently serving. So that would be Jared, Jennifer, and Holly and Ashley. So one of you can come up there. And the question is, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, it's not from Mike Terosian. He gets the email. He's just the deliverer. If you don't like the question, do not blame him. But this is from Kristen and Kevin D'Angelo of 8 Peter Picaro Drive. Our question is for the 4 school committee members that are not currently serving: Jared, Jennifer, Holly, and Ashley. The return to full-time in-person learning was a huge decision last year for the school committee, and they decided to allow the students to return exactly 1 year ago. If you were serving on the school committee at that time, how would you have voted? Would you have voted or advocated for a full return earlier, same time, or later in the school year? So we can start on the left.
Okay. So at that time, I probably would have advocated for full masking with a return to school. Because at that time, we didn't have control of the spread in the town. We had high numbers. We still had a lot of problems getting vaccinations in people's arms. We didn't have any vaccines for the 5 to 11-year-olds. We still don't have any for 5 and under. So I think I would have tried to make it possible for kids to be in the building, but in the safest way possible. Can we space everybody out? How do we make sure lunch is safe? Things like that. I feel like at that time it was still out of control, but maybe we can mitigate it in the school, particularly because we have children, the same kids together every day, so you're essentially getting these same exposures every single day. But I think that's how I would have handled it. I obviously would have been a person that brought like a big stack of research studies, because that's what I do for everything, and sometimes people don't like that. I don't know why. But yeah, like I said, most of my decision making is based on evidence-based research that you find, on those databases where peer-reviewed studies are, or raw data from various research studies.
Thank you. Jared?
Thank you.
Sure. So 2 years ago, when we entered this, I think our approach as a district, I think, was spot on. I mean, we were very conservative. We closed the schools there immediately. We went back very slowly. Completely understand. Fast forward a year from then, again, 1 year ago, I think we went back too late. I think we were too slow. At that point in time, there were a number of school districts around us, schools that I would consider us similar to. When we look at Wellesley, we look at Southborough, we look at some of the other schools right around us, they were back in school. There were others that weren't. There was Boston, there was Framingham, there was Worcester, Springfield that were not. We're not them. We're not those great big city school districts. So I was disappointed. I thought we should have gone back a little bit earlier than we did. There's things we needed to do. There were mitigation measures we needed to have in place. I mean, certainly went back. I mean, at that time, rewind a year ago, I think, masks were the right move. But I think we could have gone back earlier than we did, more in line with the school districts that I would consider us similar to. Again, those around us. I think it's dangerous to kind of look at us as Hopkinton and compare us to kind of the national average. Or, we would never do that. We wouldn't look at any aspect of our school district and say, hey, we want to be like the national average. It's not us. That's, I think, not why, certainly not why I moved to this town, probably not why a number of other people moved to this town. I think we should have done better. And in this case, I think we should have gone back a little bit earlier than we did.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, I think I had the unique perspective on this because I'm a teacher in Southborough, and so we were having the same conversations at the exact same time, and I think it was from what I was hearing from the conversations that were happening in Hopkinton, the exact same conversations were happening in Southborough and many other districts. When do you do it? It's coming. When do we make it happen? The day after April break was very contentious because people thought, oh, well, maybe people are starting to travel now, and people were starting to travel, and people were worried they were going to bring things back. But I think we did it at the right time. I think if we had tried to do it earlier in the year, I think it would have been based on what was going on in February and in March, where things kind of peaked and started to head back down. I think we picked the right time. And it was kind of a nice cut, from April vacation, come back to school, let's see what happens. And I think, I wasn't on the school committee, so I can't speak to any of the conversations that may have happened, either in an executive session. But I think that you can't, you just gotta go with your gut. And then if you needed to back off, if we got back to school and 3 weeks later caseloads went up, I suspect they had a plan in place to make sure that we backed things off. So I think we did it at the right time. I think it's worked out. I think the November trial mask-free situation was at the right time, and it kind of worked out. I think we've done things right. So I'm happy with how things have gone, and I'm hoping we're heading in the right direction from here on out.
Thank you. Yeah. Ashley?
So I had this like really great closing statement talking about full-time return. So I'm going to pick and choose a little bit from that, and then you may hear repeated stuff. But I think I pushed for full-time return. I believe it was when the conversation started happening were February and January of 2021. I attended every virtual meeting, every open meeting. Nancy got to hear from me all the time about my push for full-time return. I can speak to the young learners that I have in my house, and I know that trying to manage 3 different learning levels and navigate electronics and different specials and programs and teachers, it was just mind-boggling for my kids. And I thought the hybrid model too was really hard for young learners. I think that I had a kindergartner that year, and part of kindergarten is learning the structure of going to school every day, getting up, getting on the bus, and going every day. And by the hybrid model, she was going one day, and then she was home the next, and she was going home the one day and home the next. And she never really built that structure. I mean, I think most people can recognize that kindergartners till about Thanksgiving or Christmas are a mess every time they come home from school. And so she wasn't really able to build that. And she couldn't read at that time yet. So I was literally sitting with her on an iPad teaching her. So I really pushed for full-time return. I think that my real life experience of having kids in the schools, having 3 kids in the schools, gives me a real life experience of that, and I'm able to make better decisions of policies based on that.
Thank you. So this is also for school committee. Why don't we have the first 3 come up again? And this is for
Getting
all.
our exercise.
Right. This is for Marcella, Krishnamurthy, and I'm sorry, I can't use phonics to figure out how to pronounce your name, so I apologize. 9 Hearthstone Road, Hopkinton. There are 15% or more than the average district, of above-grade learners in our district. This includes 2E, exceptional, twice exceptional, children. With the, really can't read this, with the current approval presented in school committee meeting on March 17th, 2020. Yes, please. I apologize. And I did teach handwriting. We used the Palmer method, not that.
So I just want to explain that twice exceptional children are children who are above grade learners with disability or special needs as well. So with the current approach that was presented in the school committee meeting on March 17 this year, many students still remain unchallenged in our schools. Massachusetts is number 48 in the country, all on the bottom, when it comes to supporting these gifted learners or above grade learners. And we have no support from the state. What will you do for these learners in our district? And do you consider above grade learners children with a learning need? Or is it oftentimes we hear this is not necessary, this is privilege. So my question is, how do you view these children and what will be done for them?
Thank you. Ashley, you want to stop?
Sure. So I think children should absolutely be challenged in ways that are maybe above and beyond of what the typical classes are. I think that we should push for gifted or higher learners to get those challenges. I think that policies should be reviewed so that can be provided. I think part of what makes Hopkinton amazing is our special education, but also those programs for those gifted learners, for those exceptional students. Those are you see those kids in the paper, we see grant money from them, we see all those things, and they're just wonderful. And so I definitely think that we should fund policy and fund curriculum to meet their needs.
Yes.
So, great question, and I appreciate all that you have done around this and that you were part of kind of the push to bring the report to the school committee where that was discussed. So as the parent of a twice exceptional child, this definitely is something that is meaningful to me and impactful. I would say different schools have different ways that it's handled. At our high school, for example, we have more kids taking advanced placement exams than almost any other high school in the state. There are, I think, 4 districts that have more advanced placement. It's Boston, Worcester, Newton, and I think Wellesley, all of which are significantly bigger. So it feels like the high school is an easier way to differentiate for some of the kids who are more gifted. In addition, they have some outstanding, more curricular-based extracurricular activities, such as there's one related to healthcare, there's robotics, there's business professionals, and lots of opportunities for kids to choose the path of their own. In the elementary school, I think differentiation is really important, and if we're not meeting the needs of kids in terms of how much differentiation they need, I think that that's important for parents and teachers and the schools to look at. Because we have the ability to flexibly group them, I feel like that's an area where we could work within the existing structure. I do think that adding some extracurricular extensions in addition to what's offered at the elementary school that would help provide programming for some gifted students would be helpful. And I would say that that is true at the middle school as well, that there definitely could be an addition of that. We have space constraints right now, but in terms of adding programs, because our buildings are all kind of overflowing. But we'll have an opportunity as we're looking at what we're doing with our buildings in the future in planning for the program needs that we foresee coming down the road. So that would be kind of my long-winded answer.
Thank you.
So I think that this question has to be taken into account with the growth in our community, right? So we have every year for the past few years, we'd have significant growth, and we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of every single student in that building. And I think it would be a really great idea to sit down with all the stakeholders in the community that want these programs, right, and try to figure out how we best meet the needs. It might not be, especially at elementary level, it might not be pulling a kid out of a class. It might be like how we approach like integrated preschool, right? We have kids that have special needs in the classrooms with neighborhood children, and some of those neighborhood children are gifted and special, right? So perhaps it could be a way to teach children empathy, to make leaders, to teach compassion within the school setting, especially at younger grades. And at the older grades, it seems like we already have some opportunities for our gifted children to take harder classes, to go to a college, to take an AP class. And in the middle, I think we need to pay more attention, because I don't know of any specific program within the middle school that meets the needs of special, like, gifted children, right? So I think there's a number of ways to approach it. We could either create a special program for those kids, or we could make them, give them harder curriculum, but also make them the kids that can help the kids that need help, right? A leader, a teacher, a person that can leave that school with skill sets that don't necessarily seem academic, but are ones that make you a better person within the community, a leader within the community. But I think it's one of those things where I'd have to get in there and really talk to all the stakeholders to understand what the best approach would be. Thank you.
Jen?
So, I know, right? I'm sorry. I want to say it was probably 7 or 8 years ago in the district where I work, we actually explored a gifted and talented program. And I had the opportunity to go to a SAGE school, and I'm not even sure if SAGE school still exists, but it was a school in nearby, approximately an hour from here, for gifted and talented students. And their programs were impressive. Their class sizes were 8 to 10 kids. And so I think, seeing that model was two things. It was sort of something to aspire to help the students who, when you think about student learning at any given grade level and you have this sort of normal curve, you want the majority of the students to be under the bump. but you know that there will be children who are going to struggle at any given grade level with the curriculum, and you're going to have children who are going to get it in 10 seconds, and then you have to figure out what to do to help those kids continue to learn and grow. So, so we kind of took that model back and thought about it a little bit and tried to find ways to, as Nancy mentioned earlier, just differentiate as much as possible, put in extension activities, put in opportunities for extracurricular work that was focused on academics. So I do think, like as other people have already said, that's the sort of bummer of going almost last, sorry, Jane, that, you know, I think that we have an opportunity here to find ways to help the students whose, you know, academic experience is just so much higher than some of the other kids in the class in terms of their ability to learn stuff fast. You know, they learn it, and then what do you do with them? I also appreciate that you brought it to the school committee the other night. I was at that meeting as well. So I think that it was well received, and I think folks are thinking about it and trying to find ways to make it work within the constraints that we have in the town of Hopkinton. So thank you. Yep.
So yes, yes, unequivocally yes. So switch microphones here. Keeps doing that. Yes, I feel very strongly about bringing programs for advanced learners into the younger levels of schools. You know, Nancy mentioned that we have some really good AP programs. We have a huge number of AP programs. That helps a lot. You know, let's start talking about like 9th grade and up. You know, we need to look at the learners who are younger than that. You know, this is something that, you know, we need to support down to kindergarten, first grade, down to the youngest learners. A lot of other schools do this. You know, if we, again, I mentioned earlier on that we want to be and want to consider ourselves a top 10 district. Our peer group around the state are doing exactly that. Certainly, if we look outside of Massachusetts, you know, nearly every good school is doing, has programs for advanced learners. That's something that we need to improve on.
Thank you.
My question goes to...
Can you just state your name?
Oh, Darlene Hayes. My question's for Jared, Ashley, Holly. I'm going to eliminate Jen and Nancy because they've been on the school committee. My kids weren't part of the gifted program. My kids both had IEPs. One is about to get her bachelor's, top of her class. My son's about to get his master's, top of his class, from the Mass Maritime Academy. What is the percentage of the gifted learners in the Hopkinton school system? And I was at the State of the Town yesterday. None of you guys were here, but I know that right now we're developing programs because we've gone from 111 learners coming in as English as a second language to 765. I do not want the kids that are considered maybe they have an IEP for some reason. Both my kids had them. Both of them are excelling. But I don't want to feel like the gifted program is taken over. What is the percentage of the gifted programs in the town, and how will this balance with the kids that do need a little bit extra help but do excel in tons of areas and did take AP classes?
Ashley?
I don't know the percentage. I would have to look into that and figure that out. I'm kind of unclear of what the question specifically was. I do think that Hopkinton has done an excellent job of providing IEPs, special education, and that extra support. I know families that have clawed their way to get into Hopkinton to get their kids into these schools. And so I think that it should be definitely a good balance between IEPs and special education and all that extra support, and also lifting up the gifted learners and those other exceptional students. I think I think there is definitely a balance, but I also think the middle of the road kids, the kids that are consistently performing well, but maybe not necessarily fit into that category, also should be looked at, and I think sometimes they get lost as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit unclear about the question, but I do support having children have whatever support they need, and I think that the schools should really partner with the families and the parents and to try to figure out what that support is. I think I know families that have been on IEPs, I know families that have been in the special education, and the process that they've gone through has been really thorough, really catered to their child. It's not just normally just one person, it's a group of people helping to support this child. So I think Hopkinton does a really good job with that.
Jared?
So I think our schools need to support every single learner in school, you know, whether that be kids with IEPs or special needs, whether that be advanced learners. Right now, we're state mandated for English as a second language and IEPs. So I think we do a very good, we're getting better, and we've done well in the recent past in those areas. Advanced learners were not state mandated, and I think that doesn't mean those students should not be supported. So I think it's important that every student is challenged in school, is engaged in school. Having spoken with parents of kids who've come from other states as advanced learners in Hopkinton, it can be a challenge. It can be challenging to focus, to pay attention. If they're not getting that challenge that they've had in other school districts. So, again, as I mentioned earlier on, I feel very strongly that it's important that we support every single student in schools.
Thank you. Holly?
Yeah. I am the mom of a beautiful, beautiful boy on an IEP, and I cannot tell you how much the school system has helped him. He came into the school not being able to really talk, except for saying target, which is my fault. And now he can say, I will take responsibility for that. And now he doesn't ever stop talking. And it's beautiful. I think when you look at how our schools routinely are voted the top of the state, the top of the country, we're obviously doing a very good job managing both our IEP students and our gifted students. You can tell because our weighted average for people that are for students that take AP exam is higher than many other school systems that also have AP classes. I think we do need to really pay attention to our English as a second language kiddos because they have 2 steps to go through. They have to learn the language and then they have to learn what they need to know for their age group, right? And when we talk about gifted learners too, I think that those differentiations and those types of supports can be offered in a number of ways. When I was growing up, I grew up in Holliston. I was a gifted learner, and what Holliston did at that time was make me take half my day in Spanish. So when I was like 8 years old, I was fluent in Spanish, and I learned history in Spanish, and it was really hard, and it was challenging. So there are a number of options, I think, when we're talking about gifted kids, but we also really, those IEP kids, those kids that are struggling, I think there's a great opportunity for the gifted kids and the IEP kids to learn from each other, right? But I also think that we should have special programs for each, right? And that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take 2 more questions, and big surprise for the school committee candidates. So the question is, and we'll start with Nancy, Ashley, and Jared. Although there may be many reasons for which you are running for school committee, what is the one reason that you would like to highlight? Nancy?
So, wow, that's a tough question to narrow down. I have a track record of working with the schools. I have 2 kids who have gone all the way through the schools. I have a 6th grader and an 11th grader. The schools are an important piece to me. I would like to see the schools continue to grow the way they have over the almost 25 years I've lived in Hopkinton. I also feel like we need experience, we need commitment, we need future focus. I know that's more than one reason, but the excellence of our public schools is vitally important to our community. And I want to make sure that we continue to push forward and also to make sure that we're supporting all of our learners in the different ways they need to be supported.
Thank you. Jared?
Excellent. So, as Nancy mentioned, I think, feel very passionately about education as well as the excellence of this school district and maintaining it. I think there's a lot of things we have done well, and I think there's some things that we can continue to improve on. And at the end of the day, that's not sitting at home and kind of getting up and seeing how I can help bring a fresh perspective to the school committee is why I decided to run.
Thank you.
Yes, so I echo a lot of what they said, but I had mentioned before, I grew up in Hopkinton. I've lived here basically my entire life. I went through the Hopkinton schools when it was just Center School, Elmwood, and then the middle school, high school was the one building. So I've seen the progression of moving into town in 1990 and then to what it is now. When we moved in, the Hopkinton schools weren't great, and people were school choicing to Holliston all over the place. It was a farm town with the one light at Colella's. And then when the second light came in down the road, it was a big deal. So I've seen the progression of Hopkinton, and I've seen that. And so now moving back into town and having 3 children, my husband and I looked at different towns to move into in the area because they're all pretty nice. But Hopkinton has a special place in my heart. My parents still live here, and I wanted my kids to grow up in this environment. So that being said, because I grew up here and now I have children that will be in the public schools, I have a vested interest in the longevity of the Hopkinton Public Schools performance and the quality of the education. And I deeply value this community, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully helping it out.
Thank you, Jen.
So when I left a year and a half ago-ish, I was pretty confident that I would be back, but I probably wouldn't be back, honestly, until my daughter was 16 years old and was able to drive, because it seems like when you're on the school committee, you have commitments Monday through Thursday, 6 or 7 o'clock at night till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, or later, 10. We're in a committee meeting till midnight a couple nights, and then sometimes on weekends, and sometimes on Sundays, and so So I think I needed to step back and focus on my family. However, in light of the events that took place, this spring, and the fact that this one-year seat became vacant, and how I was so glued to HCAM over the course of the last year and a half, watching the school committee meetings, as soon as I realized there was an open seat, I said, I gotta go back. I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I need to be back in the game and be actively involved in what's going on in our district. And so that's really why I'm running. I had a chance to do it. I had a chance to step back for a year and a half and try to feel what it felt like to be retired. And then I had decided I had to come back. So that is why I'm running for the seat.
Thank you. Holly?
I'm running for school committee partly because of the last 2 years and how it has impacted our entire community, but also as a person that deeply believes in social justice, we know that education is the one factor that can create a community that is strong, equitable, inclusive, supportive school system, create children that go on to be leaders. They have lower unemployment rates, they have lower teenage pregnancy rates, they are more likely to get jobs and stay employed. There's lower crime from well-run schools. And we have this beautiful growing diversity in the community, which I think is one of our greatest strengths. And that is a huge opportunity for us to make our children stronger members of every community that they become a part of after they leave school. So if you start from when they're very young and we teach them love, we teach them compassion and empathy, we teach them inclusion, and we teach them to love their neighbor regardless of their opinion, we can have these kids that will become leaders of the world and maybe leaders of Hopkinton one day if we're lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. This final question is for Nancy, Jen, and Holly.
Sorry.
Nancy, and this is from Courtney Bradford, 30 West Main Street. Nancy, Jen, and Holly seem to be very close and agree on everything. The community of parents and residents do not all agree with their perspectives. If elected, how will they consider all voices in the community if these voices are not represented in the school board? Jen?
Sure. I mean, I met Holly 2 months ago, so I don't know that we're close, but but we're getting there. Nancy and I have worked together in the school committee for 3 years, and you know, we sort of stayed in touch. I think we went to coffee maybe twice, but I appreciate that we appear to be very close, but we are, you know, we've been colleagues. We are getting to know each other. I don't know that we even agree on everything because I haven't known Holly enough to speak to that. I know Nancy and I occasionally didn't agree with, our votes were not always unanimous, and there were on occasion times where there were either abstentions or, you know, things wouldn't pass or things would pass, but they would not be unanimous. But I do think that we tend to have very similar philosophical views, the three of us. I think that sort of the core things that we think are important from the two months that I've known Holly, it seems that we all are on pretty much in the same place. I think we value, you know, hard work. We value the kids. We value the commitment to the schools. We definitely want to hear as many opinions as possible. I know Nancy was the one who started office hours, and when she first brought it up, this is where we disagreed. I was like, wait, office hours too? I'm already here Monday through Thursday. Now you want me to go to office hours? She's like, yes, I do. I want you to go to office hours. So, but it was a great idea because community members could actually come into the library, come into wherever, coffee shop, wherever we were set up, and sit down and ask us questions in a very informal setting. And it ended up being a way that we learned a lot about what was going on in folks' minds over the course of the 2 years that we were together. So, so I think, are we, you know, close? But I think we are very philosophically similar. And if we disagree, I think we will do so in a very respectful fashion. That's the vibe I get from these two.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy?
So that actually is a surprise question for me, only because I guess part of it to me speaks to, I think, where things feel just on a national and even down through the state and the local level, which is things feel like divided, and people want to see one camp and the other. And I think that I have, you know, heard, certainly because the three of us are all endorsed by the Hopkinton Democrats, that maybe that makes us appear as though we're all the same. I've also heard people that have lumped the other three candidates as kind of similarly minded, but I think the reality is much more nuanced than that. I know if you look at, like, when we talked about the last masking vote, I did not agree with everybody up here. I voted to remove masks on the final vote when we did that back. Now I've forgotten, it was like March. And I know that Jen and I have disagreed on things in the past as well. I would say that, you know, it's important to be able to disagree civilly. It's important to be able to find consensus, whether it's the three of us or, you know, the other two candidates or the one who's not here. Kind of, Hopkinton, we do have partisan politics, which is a little bit different than a lot of other communities, but everybody standing up here wants Hopkinton, what's best for Hopkinton. We want to do what we see as the best interest of the kids. I think that, you know, masking and returning to school versus hybrid and whatnot was very divisive. I don't foresee those as being big issues coming up in the future. I do think that all 5 candidate statements, I think, mention growth in the schools, and I think that's a real issue. I don't know what everybody's approach to that would be, but I know that everybody understands that we have a shared set of problems that we need to tackle. So.
Thank you. Holly?
Yeah, I don't believe Democrats are a monolith. We can see that in our everyday politics. They, you know, neither Nancy nor Jen really have spent a significant amount of time with me. I'm exceptionally nerdy and awkward, so I think that like sets me apart a little bit here. And you know, my main source of information is evidence-based research, and that's how I kind of make decisions, particularly when you're talking about impacting the lives of a whole community of children. And I say that I'm grateful to have, like, they're humble and they're kind and they're funny, and I appreciate all people like that. And I could sit at a table and probably talk to anybody, whether they want to talk to me, I don't know. But like, I feel like it is a gift to have a disagreement, because then you get to hear what's going on in somebody else's brain, right? And you can't resolve a problem unless you understand what somebody else's viewpoint or perspective is. And as a social worker, you don't get to pick your clients. I've had clients that have attacked me with pencils, And I've had clients that are like, here's a culotta because you're nice. So it's just really the ability to sit in a room with somebody, try to figure out what makes them tick, and then like, let's get down to the ground, let's collaborate. What do you believe? What do I believe? Where can we meet in the middle? And I really don't believe the three of us are the same person. And it's kind of strange to think of that way, because when I talk to them, sometimes they'll say something and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. And sometimes they'll say something and I'll be like, I'm just going to be quiet here because I don't necessarily agree with that. But, you know, I believe that each of us has something special to bring to the table that the other ones cannot. And I think that's a great thing for our schools and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any other candidates wish to address that question? Ashley? And this is really it. Getting close to my bedtime.
So I'm the only independent or unenrolled candidate, and I can understand the question that was presented to Holly and Nancy and Jen. And while I do think they are individual people, I do understand why many people think that they are kind of a monolith of group. The Democratic Party has kind of lumped them into one group, and they campaign together, they endorse each other, houses, if you drive by a house, you see all 6 of their signs sitting at a house. It's very obvious that they're endorsed by the Democrat group. What I will say on that is that I'm the independent, I'm the moderate, I'm the one that's going to listen to both sides. I'm going to listen to Democrats, I'm going to listen to Republicans, I'm going to listen to the people in the middle. And I think that really matters. When I pulled my papers for school committee, you know, I thought about that because I do vote one way or the other all the time, and I thought, what is the strategic way of me getting on the school committee? And I chose to stay unenrolled because that's what I was before, and that's what I want to be. I want to be able to listen to both sides, and I think it's important that we do have both sides on the school committee. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I'm the independent, that I'm the unenrolled person, and I promise to listen to both sides.
Thank you. With the completion of all questions, it's now time to offer candidates a final opportunity to address the audience with closing remarks. Once again, there's a 2-minute time limit, and this time the order of speakers is reversed. Our first speaker will be the candidate for the 2-year constable position, Michael Terosian, unenrolled.
Thank you. You don't need to start your clock. This is going to be fast. Thank you, Women's Club, for your 100 years of service to the town of Hopkinton. Thank you for 34 years of bringing the candidates to the citizens to see who they're voting on. Thank you all for the tough questions for the school committee. They all get their Fitbit. You guys gave them about an extra mile on their Fitbit, so thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And all I want to say is I'm Mike Terosian. I want to be an ex-constable for the town of Hopkinton, so vote for me May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Malloy, another candidate for the 2-year position of constable.
Hi, my name is Beth Malloy. In closing, I'd just like to say I look forward to becoming the first elect female constable. I've already taken the position when our friend Frank passed away. I was the first one to step up and put in my papers to pick up where he left off, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Cynthia? For Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, for 3 years, you can vote for 1. Cynthia Estheimer, candidate for re-election, Democrat.
This is my opportunity to say thank you, everyone, for coming to the Women's Club, HCAM, and most especially the volunteers who are here tonight. I have 3 things. One is it's imperative that we lay down new turf fields. It's why I'd like to continue with the commission for safety, for the environmental improvements. And secondly, we need to keep working on the skate park, which is for the kids who don't like to run with the pack on the soccer field, for kids who need something different, a safe place for them. And lastly, pickleball. Thank you.
Thank you. For school committee, for the 1-year position, where you can vote for 1, Jared Prey, the Democrat.
Thank you. So for the past couple of years, it's been difficult for everyone. As we look back at all the hoops we made our children at the district jump through, it's clear we could have and frankly should have been better. We knew the kids were struggling. You know, the district did a survey, and you know, to take a look at the you know, the social emotional health of the high school. You know, they told us as much. You know, frankly, anyone who lives with school-aged kids, they heard the same every single night. So we knew our kids were struggling. You know, I think the school committee needs an advocate for the students. You know, it was interesting. We had a lot of questions about, you know, when should we have sent, you know, remove masks or sent kids back to school full time. There wasn't a single answer to talk about, you know, how the kids were struggling at that point, how they were struggling with part-time school, how they were struggling socially, not seeing friends. You know, for those, you know, I have a first grader, I think, as I mentioned, and, you know, for a kindergartner first grader, she went 2 years before she saw a teacher smile. You know, just something as simple as we all take for granted. So I think it's really important that as we think of this next school committee, you know, we think of a school committee that can act decisively and act with urgency. You know, the school committee, I think, will also benefit from some fresh ideas and a fresh perspective. I bring all of that to the table. As a town and as parents, we just simply can't allow the status quo to continue. You know, we've done so many things so well. Let's see where we can be a little bit better. So, you know, I respectfully ask for you to vote for Jared Prey for school committee for the one-year seat. Thank you.
Thank you. The other candidate for school committee for the one-year seat, where you can vote for one, Jen Devlin.
So I just want to just say that I would really appreciate the opportunity to serve the town again in this one-year seat. You've heard from me a lot, so other than saying thank you to the Women's Club, I will waive the rest of my time, but thank you.
Okay, right. School committee for the two-year position, where you can vote for one, Holly Moran, the Democrat.
So in closing, I think that important thing to know about my experiences, both in education and professionally, is that there's no there's no politics in science, unless you want to make it weird. And there's no politics in social work. One of the oaths I take as a social worker is to treat everybody with the same respect and dignity. And that is how I will approach my role as a school committee member. I love many voices. I love hearing from community members, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or there's like a spaghetti one, like that. I would love to hear from all people. The only way that our community can become stronger and support our children is if we all collaborate together. Like, I'm not going to turn away anybody from giving me an opinion. I would love to hear everyone's opinion. That makes me smarter and me stronger, and as well as the school committee as a whole. I don't consider myself a super political person. Basically, my worldview is take care of as many people as you can. And that's how I've lived my whole life. And anybody that knows me well will say that as well. So I don't consider this really a political job at all. I consider it a job where we take care of our most vulnerable in the community, and we do the best by them, and we hold them in high regard, and we try every day to make them feel safe and included and make sure they have what they need to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, so I had this amazing closing statement that got completely butchered by all these questions. So I'm going a little bit on the fly, but I will say that I have friends and community members in Hopkinton that do not always share the same point of view that I have in many topics, but I've continued to be able to maintain a healthy friendship and relationship with these. Some of these people are my very best friends, and we had major disagreements on certain things in the last 2 years. But through respectful dialogue and kindness, we've been able to discuss these sometimes heated topics without resorting to cruel, hurtful comments. And as a school committee member, and more importantly, as a community member of Hopkinton, I promise to rise above this culture that has become so commonplace. I will not stoop to the drama, the harsh language, and I promise to be compassionate on issues, hear people out, and meet people where they are. Each person's opinion is valid and should be considered, and no one should be silenced or made to feel like they cannot speak because they are concerned what others may say about them. I promise to make logical, common sense decisions that are not based on fear or pressure, and I will continue to have the courage to try and turn the tide in bullying and actually promote an open and fair dialogue for all community members. If this is something you're interested in, please consider voting for me on May 16th.
Thank you, Nancy.
So thank you to everybody here for participating, all of the questions. I think you probably have heard a lot about kind of what my thoughts and ideas are, but I do want to close just in, saying that all of our students are important and all of our community voices are important, particularly going forward as we're looking to tackle the growth in Hopkinton and how we're going to make sure that our campus is ready for the kids that are coming in the next 10 years. Also, I have run the past 6 years while I've been on the school committee, I have worked really hard to improve transparency, to bring office hours, to invite targeted different segments of our population in to talk about different high needs, English language learners, advanced learners, people with different religious affiliations, to talk about what their experiences are, to help broaden the lens that we have as school committee members, so that when we're making policy decisions and we're making budget decisions, we've heard from as many people as we can get to come to us. The past 2 years I know has been tough for a lot of people. There have been some strange gifts in the middle of this and kind of a shining light in a very dark time for most of us, and that has been the community involvement in the school committee. Even though there have been a lot of different opinions, there have been a lot of people who have had really increased emotion around whatever it was that they were feeling in that moment. People have shown up. We've had more people following our school committee meetings, more people reaching out to ask questions, more people calling on the phone to say, hey, what's going on with this? Or people that were afraid, are we going to shut down the schools, and wanting to have those things heard. I get more calls and more emails from people now than I did 6 years ago, and I value that tremendously. I value bringing the voices together and using the experience that I have over my time both on the school committee in the town. And I would respectfully ask for people's vote on May 16th. So thank you.
Thank you. For Board of Assessors, a 3-year position, there's one opening, one candidate, Peter Memo.
Thank you very much.
Democrat.
And thank you very much, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak to this evening. I think if we've learned nothing else from this evening is that we have a very talented group of people who are running for both the school committee and also our select board. And I just hope that if we've learned nothing, that we need to have more community engagement. I hope that everyone gets out there and casts votes and get out there and get the votes out there. We really do need to have that kind of engagement. And while you're out there voting, I do hope that you'll find it to vote for me for Board of Assessors. My name is Peter Memo, and please vote for me on May 16th and get out there and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. For Select Board, 3-year position where you can vote for 2. We'll start with Shahudal Manon, Democrat.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks for the great event to the organizers. I believe we are at a great inflection point for our town. As we approach post-COVID era, new downtown, new Marathon Museum, we are also challenged with growth, budget, and service levels along with. But I believe with proper planning and execution, we have a great future for our town. Therefore, I will focus on 3 key areas. First, managing growth and continuing our focus on school success and all service areas. Doing all these with a balanced budget and taxes in check, and preserving our natural resources and town character. Number 2, I will focus on building vision and future for a vibrant downtown and building business back post-COVID era. Number 3, finally, I will focus on promoting our diversity and equity as our town grows. I believe in one Hopkinton and that we are always stronger together. I am running based on my experience, expertise, ideas, and love for the town, who happens to be a person of color. But I do believe I have much to offer to promote diversity. Through my work for the town, I got the opportunity to work with every department of our town, with every major issues from financial, growth, and long-term environmental aspects as well. I learned to collaborate across committees, town administration, while listening to our residents. I believe with focus on these areas, my leadership, budgetary expertise, and collaboration, I can work with you all to make our bright future our reality. So please vote for me as your next Select Board member on May 16. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
During my 3 years on the Select Board, we have weathered a global pandemic, which was not an easy thing for any of us to be involved in. And what I want to do is take some of my time right now to thank the Hopkinton Police Department, Fire Department, Board of Health, Town Clerk, School Committee for working so diligently during a really difficult time. I also want to thank the DPW and the Town Hall staff, which kept our services level for everyone. And it was also difficult for them too. So we have a good town, and it's actually running very well. I've learned in the past 3 years how important it is to be a part of a team. The team of the Board of Selectmen is made up of serious people with very different views, and they come together to form a great consensus and to help move the town forward, and I think that's wonderful. 5 different viewpoints, good discussion, good decision-making. You can't move the town forward any better, I don't think. They're very good. There's still work to be done, and I have some specific projects that I want to continue working with, and they are the Cumberland Farm intersection. Everybody knows all the accidents we've had up there, and that is right now under study. The PFAS problem, and the DPW is doing a good job on that. We're going to have a temporary fix, and then we're going to continue to look to join the MWRA. Continued work through the budgetary process. I love the budget, having been an assessor, and I love the recap sheet in particular, which sets the rate. And I've been working, that's one of the things that I have been working on. I want to focus with the Green Committee on our action plan for climate action for the town and continue to advocate for seniors and veterans, which I always will do. I love being part of the Select Board and the community, and I respectfully request your vote on Monday, May 16th.
John Catino, candidate for Select Board, Republican.
I would once again like to thank the Women's Club and HCAM for hosting this event. This event, along with others, helps promote voter awareness and knowledge of the issues that face our town and how the candidates will address them, because knowledge is power. One of the main reasons I'm running, though, is based on an earlier question that the town manager may have found some extra money for the public safety. Yet in that time, we lost over a dozen officers and a K-9 unit. Whatever the reason, the Select Board must do a better job at job retention. And the Select Board must respect and support the police chief's efforts to keep Hopkinton #1 in public safety. I'm running to refocus the Select Board on the issues that matter most to the residents of Hopkinton. Excellent schools, award-winning public safety, and exceptional services. I'm running to be sure that your tax dollars are spent wisely on projects and services that move our town together, move our community forward together. I'm running to bring balance, perspective, diversity of thought, and strong local experience to the board. I would appreciate your vote on Monday, as Mary Jo said, on Monday, May 16th. And thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you. For town moderator, 3-year position, where you can vote for one, Ellen Rutter, Democrat.
Well, like everyone else, I'd like to extend my thanks to HCAM, to Kathy and the Women's Club, and to everyone who came in tonight either to listen or ask questions. I hope you will come with similar questions and energy to town meeting next week. It is Monday also, May 2nd, starting at 7 o'clock. It's in the high school field house. One note that I'm excited to say here at the Women's Club is that I am the first woman town moderator in Hopkinton, and I believe they've been using a moderator led government for 300 years. So it's a big honor and big responsibility, I think, to moderate town meeting in a way that brings as many voices to the fore and really talks about issues that matter to you. So I hope you all come to town meeting next week, and I may even invite these timers because I think you do a great job, and then I won't have to do it. So I'm thinking it would be great to have you there. So with that, I invite you to join me at town meeting next Monday night, May 2nd, and I hope you'll also vote for me on Monday, May 16th. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's give my hand up. On behalf of the Hopkinton Women's Club, I want to extend a special thank you to the candidates who participated in the event tonight, and to our studio audience and television viewers for joining us. I also want to acknowledge the HCAM TV staff, crew, and their volunteers for making this broadcast possible. Their expertise and patience is especially invaluable to me. Additional gratitude goes to the Women's Club volunteer members, the student volunteers, one who's my granddaughter, and the town clerk. We hope this presentation has been informative, and I encourage all registered voters to vote in our town election on Monday, May 16th. All Hopkinton precincts vote at the middle school gym between the hours of 7 o'clock a.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. Absentee ballots are available at the town clerk's office. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of All About Hopkinton, the original HCAM series created to bring you the people and the organizations that help make this community a great place to live. There are a lot